Yo, what's going on guys, Arekkz here, welcome back to another video for PLAYERUNKNOWN'S Battlegrounds. This is a game that I've been playing so much lately. I play it pretty much every single day with 269 on his live streams. If you guys haven't tuned into any of those, then you can find a link to his stream in the description box down below. We're live pretty much every single day and are absolutely loving this game right now. I know a lot of you guys are playing it as well, and a while ago I did a video on some beginner tips to help you get started. I'll link it down below if you guys haven't seen that. However, since then there have been a few updates to the game, things like performance updates, server-side stuff, general maintenance related things, but this week, April the 20th, is the very first content update, the first sort of large scale update. For those of you guys that are unaware, this game is currently available in early access. If you want to play it, you can buy it on Steam in the early access program, but do of course note, as an early access game, there are still bugs, there are still things that are being fixed, and of course there are regular updates to move the game closer to a full retail client. Now what they have basically said they're going to be doing is, on a monthly basis, they're aiming to drop these bigger content updates that will add actual new content to the game, as well as fixing things in the background, and of course in between those updates they will do the usual kind of background maintenance stuff, server-side stuff, any of the performance fixes that they need to do. So as mentioned, this week, April 20th, that is on Thursday, at 5 PM KST, that's Korean time, because of course that's where the studio is, 1 AM Pacific time and 8 AM UTC, the update will go live. Maintenance is supposed to be about an hour long, so once that's done, you'll then be able to jump on and experience some of the new content. So in this video, I want to go over exactly what's contained in that update, some of its bug fixes, some of its new content, some of its new weapons. So for those of you guys that want to know exactly what's coming, then look no further. If you do enjoy this, you do find it helpful, then like would be super appreciated. Any questions, drop them down below. And as always, links to all the posts that I'm speaking about in this video are down below as well, so patch notes and images of the new stuff. So, first up, it is worth noting, as mentioned, since it's an early access game, there will be a lot of performance fixes in this patch, but it won't fix absolutely everything because it is still an ongoing project, an ongoing kind of timeline. So do expect continual regular fixes going forward, but they are still going to be aiming to fix some of the stability issues, some of the performance issues, some of the FPS drops that people have been experiencing, and some of the memory leaks as well. So some of that stuff is going to be addressed as best as possible in this update. But let's talk about the brand new content. First up, a new weapon, a brand new SMG, the Vector, is being added. This is a powerful SMG, typically appropriate for short to mid-range combat. Now I appreciate SMGs in-game at the moment don't get a great deal of use. You typically pick them up early game if you haven't got a gun, so you can defend yourself, and sometimes you make it into late game if you've been a little bit unlucky with your loot, but generally speaking, most end game fights take place with either assault rifles or snipers, since there are a lot of kind of long range engagements. However, hopefully the Vector, if it is good enough, if it's appealing enough, then it will potentially mix up the combat. Especially if it is one of those kind of late game shrinks in things like the ruins or the cities, then there might actually be some utility for this weapon. Definitely excited to try it out myself, and of course in the background, this is what it looks like. On top of that, there's going to be a new vehicle, a motorbike with a sidecar. So it looks like this. You can see this, again, if you want to look down below, you can actually drag it around and kind of like look at all different angles in it. So if you want to get a good look at the vehicle, you can see it. But it is worth noting, with the first edition of this bike, there are a few known issues. The first being that the motorbike leans slightly to the right when driven straight, so you'll of course need to counteract that when you are using it. The second thing is the tyres on this motorbike currently can't be shot out, so whereas things like Jeeps, Dacias and the buggies, you can shoot the tyres out, which is of course a strategy, the bike currently doesn't have that feature, so for a little while it might actually be quite useful in that respect. It's also worth noting that at some point later down the line, a bike is going to be added without a sidecar. So for those of you guys that just want to ride a one-person bike, that will be available. But for the time being, with the very first edition, it is a two-person vehicle, one on the bike, one in the sidecar. On top of that, they're also adding a new sight, the 2x aimpoint scope. I am super excited about this. If you guys ever played the Armor Battle Royale mod, this was my go-to sight. It's my favourite sight. It essentially falls between the sort of holographic sight and the 4x ACOG style scope, so it's a little bit less zoomed in, obviously, given it's a 2x zoom scope, but I find, especially for things like assault rifles, it's really, really nice to use. It gives you a little bit more zoom, so you have a little bit more kind of sight with it, but it's not kind of in your face to the point where if you use something like a SCAR with a 4x zoom and you try and zoom in up close, it's just horrible to use. So this should bridge that gap. I am a huge fan of these sights, so it's definitely something you're going to want to run with if you're using assault rifles. On top of that, they are adding a ballistic mask. Now, the patch notes themselves doesn't state whether that is a helmet, i.e. like a level 3 helmet or something like that, or whether it's just a cosmetic item, so I'm not entirely sure at this stage, but that is a new thing being added. Plus, they're adding 3 colour variations for the Dacia, which is quite nice given that they are currently all just blue. And they are finally adding the crossbow back into the game, which I'm super happy about. I don't actually use it in-game because it's not that useful, but I do like messing around with it in the lobby just because you fire arrows into people's heads. So, those are the main content updates. Under the world side of things, they've adjusted the density of environmental elements to be identical across all graphical options, because those of you guys that play it seriously might know that a lot of people are opting to choose the low graphics setting because it actually renders less grass on screen, making it easier to see people. So for those of you guys running Ultra with settings turned up to the max, then you're actually doing yourself a disservice currently because it makes it a lot harder to see people. So they're going to be changing that. They're also adjusting object placement to address issues for characters getting stuck, so hopefully I don't get stuck in the rocks like I've done before. They're adjusting the placement of trees that were spawning inside houses or above terrain, and they're adjusting the frequency of thunder sound effects. After that, moving over to the gameplay side of things, you are now able to move sideways and backwards in the revive state. So typically when you're on the ground and you are downed, you have to move forward. So you will of course, get to your team by turning your mouse and looking that way. But this way you can now just physically, backstep or sidestep. So if you're trying to keep an eye on an enemy, then that way you don't have to put yourself at harm's way. On top of that, this one is a really good one. This is something I've been asking for a very long time, and a lot of people have been waiting for this. But your revive timer will no longer decrease when a teammate is attempting to revive you. So if they're in that position where they're just outside the circle, the health is super low, and you're trying to revive them, but you just know that the revive timer is not going to be fast enough to complete the revive before their health goes down, that is no longer an issue. The second you start reviving someone, when this update drops, the health bar will stop depleting, so you'll actually be able to revive them at like a slither of health. Very, very useful. Also, when attempting to revive a teammate, the reviving timer icon will now be visible to the player that is being revived, so they know how close they are to, getting up. They've adjusted the character position slightly when in the revive state. They've also made improvements to address the issue of characters shaking while being spectated. You're also now going to be able to open the world map if you're spectating someone else. You'll also be able to view the casting bar when you're spectating your teammate, and of course when they're using things like, heal items, boost items, anything like that. And you can no longer use heal or boost items when in the water. So for those of you guys that were kind of like living under the water as a survival tactic, that's going to change things up a little bit. So that's the gameplay side of things. Moving on from there to action and gunplay, they've adjusted the overall balance on all attachments. They've adjusted the overall balance on assault rifles. They're going to continue to balance all weapons and attachments throughout early access. They've fixed an issue that caused cars to temporarily stop when their tires get shot out. You can also now sprint while in the crouch stance. I am so happy about this as someone that walks around in crouch quite a bit, because of course it's a lot better than poking your head up and walking around like an open target. Then being able to sprint while crouching, I imagine it'll be a little bit slower than sprinting with non-crouch, but either way it's going to be very useful for crossing some ground without having to put yourself at harm's way. The blood effect that is created when you're hit, the size of the blood will now vary according to the weapon caliber. So of course if you get a big blood splatter, you're going to know you're being hit by something pretty serious. I mean, you'll probably know that anyway, given that it'll do a lot of damage, but either way, that'll be something for maybe your teammates to look out for. If you see a tiny splatter, it's probably like a pistol or a, SMG, and if you see a massive splatter, it's probably like an AWP or something like that. You can also now move when aiming or scoping in the prone state. They've also fixed an issue where the sitting position of the character in the back right seat of the UAS was a bit funky. They fixed an issue with the position of the left hand when reloading the AWM or the AWP. They fixed an issue where aiming from vehicles was not accurate, so for those of you guys that actually want to do drive-bys, you might have a little bit better luck now. The positions of bullets are now the same for both yourself and others. They fixed an issue that caused the hitbox for the head to be slightly larger than the actual head, so some of those kind of questionable headshots should hopefully not happen quite so frequently. They've adjusted the ragdoll physics for dead characters to be more natural. They fixed an issue that caused the character to use the wrong aim offset when using the freelook function. They've improved the quality of zoom-in scopes. The bolt actions are now triggered even after the final shot has been fired, so that way you can't start, refiring as soon as the reload's complete. They've added swimming animations to go upwards and downwards, so it again looks more natural. Your character now uses a different animation when in the crouch stance and holding a melee weapon. Improvements have been made to the reload animation for the M249 and the P1911, and the muzzle flash is now brighter than before and is now visible from a longer distance. So quite a lot of things in there. There are a couple of things I skipped over because they weren't necessarily as important, but those are the kind of main bullet points. There have also been some changes to sound, some general kind of bug fixes, some miscellaneous changes, but the last thing I want to talk about is a test server. So what they want to do going forward, instead of actually just dropping the updates on the early access, they are going to be adopting a test server. So the update will then ideally go live on the test server on Wednesdays, ahead of the update going live later in that week. So that way it allows people to jump on there, test it out, see how they feel about it, much like you get on things like the PTR, the PTS, and things like Division or Overwatch or World of Warcraft, anything like that. Idea being we can test out the update before it's actually officially live, and then if it goes well, cool. If on the other hand it has a negative impact on performance, then we can just, you know, roll it back. So that is something else. Then of course I have some more information on the public test server side of things later on, but for the time being, that is pretty much it. So those are the most important changes coming to Battlegrounds on the April 20th update this Thursday. For those of you guys that do want to read everything, check out the patch notes link down below. There are of course all the details on the minor bug fixes and some of the stuff that I didn't speak about in this video. But for those of you guys that want a kind of idea on the main content being added, then now you know. Things to look forward to, namely the Vector, the two-person bike, and that aim point sight. Definitely check that out. If you guys didn't play Armor and you don't necessarily know about the aim point, then I would highly recommend checking it out. Anyway, thank you for watching. Let me know in the comments down below if you guys are enjoying this game, if you guys have been playing it a lot. But until then, take it easy. Catch you next time. Peace out.